back to Chocolate and Spice, Two Brown Women Talk. I'm Nidhi.
And I'm Neha. But today we're stepping out of the spotlight just a little bit.
Because we have a very special guest today. Drum roll, Aryan!
Yeah, Aryan, my 19 years old son, has always asked the big questions about life, relationships, and how we got here.
And today he's turning the mic on us with some unfiltered, thoughtful, and honestly kind of deep questions about love, marriage, parenting, and how relationships really work, especially when you are the product of two different cultures. All right, Aryan, are you ready with your first question for your mom?
I am.
All right.
Why did you agree to an arranged marriage?
That's a great question and a very tough question. But for me, at that time, it was a very easy decision. In India, especially at the time, which is when I got married like about 21 years back, arranged marriage was the norm. And that's what I had seen my family, which is my parents, my grandparents, all my aunts and uncles, all of them do the same thing. So for me, it was a successful arrangement. And for me, it suggested a successful life, which is what I was going for. The other thing that I wanted to share is it's going to sound funny to you, but I was always the kind of person, even when I was very young, who wanted to, if I were to date, I wanted to date somebody who I would marry. So for me, the idea was marriage was the way to go. And I could never find somebody who I thought I could marry, right? Like I would have to date them, of course, to be able to figure out that I have to marry. And so for me, a great option was, because also my parents were very willing to do it, was to try and see how arranged marriage works. And you know very well that it worked well.
Well, my main question is, how did you agree to marry someone you barely knew?
Yeah, so for me, that's not how I looked at it. So my parents, and it's funny because my arranged marriage was even more arranged than you can imagine, which means I never met your dad. Like I met your dad a day before marriage. And before that, we did communicate via emails. Emails were there, thankfully, by then. And we used to call each other. So we did communicate, we did chat, but we never saw each other, we never met each other. But in spite of that, my parents were very sure that he's the right guy because he did meet his parents. And, there's a whole system in India. There's a whole network system in India which is built to make arranged marriages successful, which means anybody can ask anybody basically about this person. So let's say for your dad, my parents, like your grandparents, could ask other folks about how is he, like how is his family, and I'm sure that's what your dad's family did as well about me. And so we knew enough from the grapevine about how your dad is. Plus, he was in a great job. He was working in a great company, and he was well settled. He was well educated, and all of that really matters in terms of how we approach arranged marriage. So for me, a lot of that was inbuilt because I trusted my parents. And second, I saw your dad's credentials and I was like, that makes sense. And then, of course, I did talk to him. Like, if on talking with him, I had felt something is not right or we're not vibing, then I would have said no. And I had absolute power to say no. Like, my parents weren't like, here's the guy, you just cannot say no. That was never the point. The point was, here is a guy, check it out. And so, same for your dad. We both, when we chatted, we vibed the very first time we talked. So that was great, and that answers you. Maybe it's not true for everyone, but for me, it was a fact.
You brought up an interesting point about the network, but I guess I'm more concerned about knowing that India has a problem with violence toward women. Were you ever afraid that marrying someone you don't really know would lead to an abusive relationship?
Oh, that's such a great question, and you're absolutely right. In India, that is definitely a big problem. So again, very fortunate that I had not seen a lot of that in the family, and I had not known a lot about it at that time. I was aware, of course, about violence towards women in India, but I didn't necessarily associate that with arranged marriage, to be honest. It could happen in India. Unfortunately, it could happen at any point in life, right? You're walking on the street, it is quite possible. You are in an abusive marriage, whether it is a love marriage or an arranged marriage, and I'm using air quotes here to indicate the difference. So for me, it was not that association. It was not like if I marry a person, they're going to be an abuser. My parents were very clear. If you marry, no matter who we ask you to marry, and if you marry that person, if that person is an abuser of any form, you are absolutely, you should leave that person. Like, feel empowered to make your choice. So it was never like, oh my gosh, it's an arranged marriage. You're stuck with that forever if something goes wrong. So I was always empowered to make right decisions.
it was still a big risk, though. Understandably. Right?
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. It was a risk, and the more, like, in hindsight, it was a risk because also I was very young.
It paid off, though. So I mean, in your case,
How long have you been married?
I've been married for 21 years. My
Mm.
son is 19. I've been married for 21 years. So yeah,
Really, something worked.
it did.
So you're saying it's more of a luck system for you. Other people might not have had like such a fortunate outcome, but for you, it was more.
I would say,
Mm.
and luck in this case is also based on a lot of methods and a lot of mechanisms that have been very well established. India is entrenched in this system so well that it is a force in itself. Like, you have to be there to see it.
I'm still kind of like suspicious of the
Mhm.
whole system.
Totally.
So my next question would be, what role did the caste or your skin color play in your marriage?
So I won't say marriages, arranged marriages, particularly in India, and I'm not sure what's happening now, but at least at that time, was very much based on commonality across what we call caste, or a certain section of the population. Sometimes even subcaste needs to match. So that is true. And if I think about it, like, the more I've rationalized it, the more I've thought about it in the sense of what really works for an arranged marriage. It's like, culturally, you want to be sure that a girl or a boy will fit well, and so that you could only be sure of if you know what this family's culture is going to be, and that is again only possible if you're in the same caste, because a certain caste in India will behave a certain way, will have certain I don't know, practices or way of cooking or way of living. And so I feel like that could have been the probable reason why this structure was created, and also to simplify matters. Typically, at least for the longest time in India, certain sections of the population lived together in certain areas. It was just easier to learn about each other. And then it probably became a rule. Don't know if it's a good rule, bad rule. I really cannot judge because I've lived my thing well. But sure, there are things that can be updated, changed.
Yeah, no, for sure. I feel like the whole cast system is very outdated, and
Absolutely.
especially with the skin color dynamics in India, it's, in my opinion, kind of problematic.
Yeah,
But,
totally,
Sure.
totally.
yeah, no. A more general question: what do you wish more kids knew about arranged marriages?
Do you want to take it? I can take it.
Yeah, take it. I mean, the only thing I can add here is one thing about arranged marriages that I think works really well is it you you are married to somebody who has the same core values, and I think that is the foundation of arranged marriage. Like, we got married where we knew the family very well. We knew the background. We were from the same financial situation. Our parents, kind of worked together. So that made us believe that we were brought up in a similar manner. So that is I think, the foundation of any arranged marriage, that I don't know if you will understand, because it's a community. It's like, I knew my in-laws, like my husband and I, we went to the same school. We
Yeah.
saw each other. We didn't really talk, but I knew that we were of the same wavelength, at least a family, and that kind of brought the trust in, I feel.
100%. And
Yeah.
that's what, like, it's hard for somebody who's not seen it in action to
Yeah.
get. But even with your dad, I knew relatives of your dad because they were around in the same neighborhood. So we kind of knew the family, more or less. And that's what it means by geographical closeness. And that really helps us build that kind of trust, if that answers your question.
Kind of, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
A question for my Masi.
Mhm.
Living with someone you know is always going to be complicated, either like no matter what. So, what was it like living with someone who was so different from you and someone you don't really know that well?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question. We are very different. Like, you have
Mhm.
seen my husband and I, we both are
Exactly.
very different, poles apart. So initially it was not easy at all. It was pretty hard living under the same roof when we both are used to living alone to our own individuality. We had our own rhythm, and now we are thrown to live as roommate or under the same roof and figure things out. Like, we had different perspective on what organized means, what does a weekend look like. Everything was so different. But one thing that really helped is respect. We both, from the very beginning, we both had respect for each other, and assuming that the other person has my best interest in mind. So that faith, that removes the chance of being bitter. Like, even though we have differences, I think I always knew that he thinks well of me, and that kind of help me get closer to him. And then eventually, after, once you start living with each other, you kind of blend in. You kind of understand each other.
Sorry, we had a technical difficulty and Nikki's back.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I was almost done with the questions. So, assuming good intent was a part of like, how do you adjust with somebody who is so different? And eventually, we started liking each other's differences. Like, he started liking how goofy I was. I started liking the intellectual side of him. And then just made it easier. Like, the respect really plays a big part, that we both don't really have to be really same, but how do we still make it work?
So your differences brought you guys closer together, is
Yeah,
what you're saying.
yeah, exactly. So differences made it more exciting.
Mm.
So I think that was really helpful. Yeah.
I get the excitement, but you're a lot more laid back and calm compared to Siddharth Masachi. So, and he's low-key kind of OCD, intellectual kind of person. So how does that work?
So yeah, I mean, I always believe that the difference between us really is our strength. And I have friends who are really like me, and we like the same thing together, and we do a lot of things together. We understand each other, we share the same jokes. But with my husband Siddharth, we are different, but that is the unique thing. And I don't think a partner needs to be your mirror. They need to complement you. And I think that is the best part of about us. Like, if we both are too outgoing, I don't think we'll ever get anything done. Or if we are too reserved or too much into work, we both will just burn out. So we are a very good balance. And now slowly we have learned to enjoy each other's different personality. So we have that respect. So that really has worked out for us, like the mutual respect, the way we understand each other, and just giving each other space. Like, we understand that he understands I'm an extrovert and he's an introvert. So I just give him space to be himself, and he gives me space, and that kind of makes it work.
Yeah. So you're saying you like the fact that your husband's very different from you. You don't think?
Yeah, he pushes me. He actually pushes me, and he has made me realize there are some talents or some habits in me which I would have never helped, or which I would have never developed if I was on my own. So he kind of helps me discover part of me, because he's so different from me, that would have been, I think, hidden or something. So I just love that part, that the way he's so different, so unique, and those are the characteristics I don't have, but how he kind of, brings that into my life. Yeah.
So making decisions with such like different personalities must be kind of complicated. How do you guys manage that?
Yeah, I mean, that was very complicated initially in the very beginning. Let's just say, I'm not going to make it rosy. It was very hard. It was very hard because we had a very different perception of everything, whether the house cleaning, the organization, the finances, everything. We had a different perspective on everything. But eventually, when you start living with each other, something amazing happens. Is like, you start blending. You meet, you work hard. There are arguments. There's a lot of patience needed, but you eventually kind of find your own rhythm. You understand each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, eventually, it is a lot of work. I'm not saying it happens overnight. There is conflict. There's ego in the middle, but eventually, if you give it time, you kind of soften. You kind of bend, and you meet the other person in the middle. And one thing that really helped us in our relationship is, as I mentioned, that our core values were same. We are both opinionated. We both have opinion on different things, but things that matter we agree on, such as how do we want to manage our money, how do we want to raise our son, how do we want to spend the rest of our life, like what standard do we want to maintain the rest of our life, and how do we want to travel. So all of those things which are important to us, we agree on, even though we have a lot of differences. So it's like, it's never 50-50. Like, marriage is never 50-50. It's 60-40, 10-90, but eventually we understand it adds up. So I think that is the core of, being married to somebody so different, but still able to make like educated and good decisions.
So you're saying it's pretty much a normal relationship. There's nothing like...
Yeah, there is nothing. I mean, I think, well, I've seen a lot of relationship, and I think this is standard. Like, when two people live together, you won't marry somebody just like you. I mean, there is something different in the other person that you'll find attractive that maybe you don't have, and that's how you get together and you enjoy each other's differences. So I think it is very normal. In our case, maybe it was a little bit more obvious because he's such an introvert and I'm such a extrovert, and he's such an intellectual person. And I was like, let's watch Frasier, and he would try to make me read some research paper. So it was different, but eventually we started enjoying that thing about each other because we understood that we shouldn't change each other, but kind of give each other space to just be yourself. So I think that helps.
And the thing is, like, even when you two people are apparently similar or same, they are not. They can never be. There will always be differences, no matter how you marry each other. Like, even if you marry somebody who you thought this person is exactly like me, has the same decision-making skills or the same hobbies, when you actually marry and start living, you realize they are a different person, and then you have to still go through similar stages.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's like this lots of overlap between a more conventional relationship versus arranged marriage?
Absolutely. Yeah. The way he phrased conventional relationship versus arranged, I'm thinking, wait,
what's a conventional relationship? What does it even mean? Yeah,
it's funny, but I exactly like the way I have thought about marriage always is whether you come from a place of having found the person by yourself via what we call love, or it's been arranged and you've fallen in love. Ultimately, you reach the same state, which is two people who are not going to be the same no matter what, have to coexist and coexist in a harmonious manner and potentially raise a family. And so you have to reach that place. Now, we all figured that way out if we wanted to reach that place.
It was interesting that you phrased it as what we call love. Like, what do you think love in an arranged marriage is like? Like, how would you perceive love in an arranged marriage? Like, do you just grow to love one another, or is it more like, okay, this is more like a glorified roommate? I'm just figuring out how to like bond with them. I don't actually love this person. Is that what?
Again, a great question. So I know there are different definitions of love, right? There is romantic love. We all have read romance novels. We have seen romantic movies, and the way it's shown, like, you see this person and that's it, you're done. Like, and obviously this is an arranged marriage. That's not going to happen. But like I mentioned, there is always a vibe. Like, like when I talked to your dad, even when I'd not seen him, I knew that this person seems like the kind of person I can at least definitely talk to, and we seem to have similar, at least, mannerisms. And when I met with him, there was a connection, right? When I actually saw him, there was a connection. Do you want to call it love? Do you want to call it like conditioning? I don't know. So again, I won't say that arranged marriage obviously doesn't necessarily come from a place of love, like you just don't have the opportunity to fall in love first. But when you marry, if the stars align, of course you will end up start loving the person if you've had a long relationship. So in my case, I can only speak for myself. It did happen. Like, as I started knowing about him, he's a very kind, caring person, and he made it clear that he loved me a lot, and that's always great to know. And so it made it very, very easy for me to reciprocate, because he was, I realized he is the kind of man I was looking for. He has all the qualities that I was looking for in a man. So again, I don't know if it was lucky or not, but I believe for most arranged marriages, that's how the journey could be with love.
Yeah, and we do want to add a disclaimer. We are sharing our experiences.
Absolutely, our experiences
so
only.
Different people can have different experiences. And yes, we do realize there is a luck factor to it. So I'm not going to deny that. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. Like, it all starts with the physical attraction. You are physically attracted to somebody, and then you find one or two quality that sticks, and then you can, keep liking it. There are always pros and cons. There are always some part of somebody you won't like, but focus on the good part. I think that is really important in a relationship, and that's why you never give up. Like, as long as it's not toxic, it's like focus on the good part. Like for Siddharth, he's very kind. He has a lot of empathy. Like, I was very childish. I was very young when I got married. I was very childish. I was very immature, but he was certainly much more mature than me. So he kind of gave me the space, and he just he never tried to make me a different person. Like, he was always ambitious, driven, wanted to do the best. And I was, obviously, as you said, I was laid back. I'm enjoying my life. And he kind of told me one thing that stuck with me, which really made me love him even more. And he said, Nidhi, ambition looks different for different person. Just because it looks like being top performer at everything, I'm an overachiever, doesn't mean it's the same for you. You have a different vision, and if that makes you happy, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to live by my definition of success. I'm going to help you become the best version of yourself, whatever that is. And when they say things like that, and when they actually end up doing things like that, that person has your best interest, and this is love. Whatever you read of those flowery things, this is real love. When you want to spend your life together with somebody, this this is
Yeah.
what is sustainable.
And that's sustainable.
Yeah,
connection.
that's true.
Sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you guys, the luck really did pay off. Like it was
I mean,
okay.
sure. He's pushing the luck
This
part,
is
but
pushing the luck part, and not incorrectly.
yeah,
Again,
yeah.
we
Again,
can only speak for
exactly.
our, and of course we've all heard stories of how things can go wrong,
Yeah.
and arranged marriages take many different forms. We're talking about an arranged marriage from a very different place,
That's true.
and we want to acknowledge that it is not necessarily always true. But
Yeah.
we can only share our own.
So on that note, have you guys ever wondered how like a more non-arranged marriage kind of relationship where like while you're with your partner, were you ever like, nah, I'd rather have met them in a more natural way instead of like being, in a sense, assigned by my parents?
Of course, we all have wondered about it once or twice in our life, like what would that have been? But like I said, for me, it was a very conscious decision at a very young age. I was, I think, 23, close to 24, but actually 23 when I got married. And that was still long enough time when I could have found a partner for myself if I wanted to. And so, of course, like, as a teenage girl in college, like I wondered about dating and romance and what would happen if I found a connection. And it's not like I didn't meet guys. Like it was not like I was prevented from meeting guys. There were enough opportunities, but it just never worked out that way. So for me, even if like after marriage, there was no wondering because I had made a very conscious choice. I knew for sure that nothing else was working out for me, and this is what I wanted to do. And anyway, I had liked your dad, but there was no point wondering about what else could have happened. So now you're forcing me to do it.
Yeah, so like living with someone in your home country of India, like someone you barely know, is already complicated enough. What was it? How did your relationship dynamics change when you moved to America? How did that affect your connection with your partner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a blessing in disguise for me.
Yeah.
So we were just thrown to figure things out by yourself as a couple, with no interference, with no pressure from anybody, with like no society watching over you. We were just told you have to live together under a roof and figure out a way to do it. So that made us a very good team. Like when we moved here, I think we just we had to figure out health insurance together. Like we had to figure out so many things together, getting internet together when we moved to a new house. We both were just young and trying to figure things out in a new country. So there were struggles. There were obviously arguments. There were, not easy things. But I think living on our own and figuring things out as a couple, that just made us stronger. And that worked for us. I don't know if you have a different opinion.
Absolutely, ditto. Like I feel like, and just like you, right after my marriage, we moved to the US, and for us it was open field, right? Absolutely no one watching over us. And I'm pretty much going to repeat what you just said, which means like not necessarily following the super traditional expectation of, especially coming from an arranged marriage. And so your dad and I had an opportunity to build our lives the way we wanted to, and we really figured it out for ourselves. We would, like it was almost like a romantic couple, if that's what you're questioning about. Like, yeah, we were walking around, we roamed about, we found new places to visit, and I think it was, to be honest, a blessing. Of course, there were challenges, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Of course, there are challenges
Yeah.
because the advantage of having your family and your extended family around is if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you fight anyone, advice, especially when you get pregnant and you're giving birth, you might need help, which both of us just didn't get. So that was something we definitely missed. But for a marriage, it worked out really well.
Okay, that's interesting. So when you guys get into arguments, how do you handle it? That must be challenging.
Yeah, I mean, initially, as a newly married couple, it was challenging. I am, as you know, Aryan, I'm dramatic by nature. So everything was a drama. And we both just would stew in silence and we would go to bed angry. And we just didn't know anything better. We just didn't know how to resolve the conflict. We just let our ego come into play. But obviously, that was not sustainable. But then we did have kindness towards each other. We did respect each other. So we had to find a way how to get better at it. And we did a lot of work on ourselves, like a lot of patience, a lot of thinking through, a lot of conversations. But that eventually we figured out like a middle ground of what works best. And now we never go to bed angry. And the one thing that I do, we both do very well now is even when somebody is trying to get into an argument or trying to disagree with something, instead of pondering over that, we try to figure out what is the reason for that person's behavior. And it's like, put yourself in the other person's shoe. It's like, oh, did something go wrong at work? Or is the person overstimulated? Or is something else troubling? Are they bringing work home? Like, what is this argument about? It's certainly not a big deal. So kind of uh, not get fixated on like the symptoms, kind of figuring out the cause. And that did require for me especially a lot of emotional maturity. But eventually we got at a state. I wouldn't say initially it was very rosy, but now we have a very good way of figuring out when we get into disagreement.
Amazing.
Yeah, on the note of potential conflict, I know that lots of cultures, and especially Indian culture, they have very traditional roles for men and women in terms of gender roles and like what tasks you should be doing. So knowing that both of you guys are working people and you're both engineers and all that, what tasks did you and your partner take care of at home? Like, how do you guys split the workload in terms of like doing chores, dishes, raising kids,
Sure.
stuff like that?
You want to start, Dee?
I am sorry, I got distracted.
All right.
Our cute little pup was asking to be picked up.
Aw.
So you can
Yeah,
start.
okay, I can start. So his question was, how do you like divide chore as a working person, as working woman or a mother? Like, how do you figure out who does what in the household? Because we don't have a village here; it's just us, a small family. So I think it is, as I said, marriage is never 50-50. And I think the sooner you realize that, the better it is. Because initially I would be like, oh, he's not doing so much, he's not doing as much as me. But later I realized it's different. And eventually it just adds up. It just makes sense. So when I went back to work 3 months after I had Vikram. So it was a lot of late nights and pumping and breastfeeding. So we sat down and we talked about it and said that I'll take care of all the baby stuff. You take care of everything else, because that is all my bandwidth is. That is all I can do. And then he does take care of all the car things, all the insurance, all the mortgage, the finances. We both invest like in our finances, but he is the person with the spreadsheet who is making sure that our retirement is up to date and how are we going to do all of that. And I am, to answer your question, yes, it is traditional in my household, and I'm fine with it. And I take care of all the cooking. I am the default parent for my son Vikram, and I do all the school things, pick up, drop off, cooking meals for him, making sure the birthday invitation is sent, and all of that. And so, we meet in the middle. And one thing that really works in any kind of responsibility we share as a family is knowing that what the other person is doing and making sure the other person is appreciated. So I always make sure he knows that I see you, you got my car inspection done, I see you, you filled gas in my car, and I appreciate it. So that kind of, just, that everything requires effort. So that really helps, that whatever task you do, just make sure we appreciate the other person. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so like, do you and my dad have more traditional gender roles in the house, or is it a little different despite the Indian culture being more traditional and also you being a working woman? And
Great question. Yeah, I have a slightly more nuanced answer. So initially that's how it started. Far more what you got traditional, which is, especially when you were very young. So it was primarily the same as what Nidhi described. Like, I would do most of the household, the cooking, taking care of you, and your dad did most of the outside kind of, what you call outside kind of work. And of course, now that you're in college, it doesn't matter, right? Because like it can easily be 50-50. So I really give credit to your dad, because even though he is not historically cooked, he has started cooking a lot. I mean, he does most of the cooking, to be honest. And he does a lot of household, like, washing clothes or washing dishes, walking Millie, feeding Millie. A lot of the work is done by him. So he and I share a lot of those activities 50-50 now. And so if you want to call that non-traditional, sure, like in today's world, what's traditional? I think it's very much based on context and very much situational. Like, who is the best place to support a certain thing at a given time? When you were young, your dad and I both agreed, it was very mutually understood that I am best placed to support you. Even if he wanted, we both kind of agreed that I would still be the best place to support, and it was fine. But your dad was always very supportive of my career, and if I'd ever told him like I actually cannot do this and you gotta do this, he would have done it. So that way, I feel like we were non-traditional, if you want to call it, but had traditional roles.
So how did your husband support you while you were raising kids or working?
You mean your dad? Yes.
Yeah.
It's like-
I'll leave the question mark over you.
That is true. That is true. The way I would say, your dad supported me was, first of all, he was very supportive, like in terms of giving credit and making me feel good. He was also very caring about what I wanted in terms of my entertainment. Like, do you want to go out? Or if he felt like I was tired and didn't feel like cooking, he would always offer to take us out or help cook. And let's say you had a bunch of like, I've always home cooked, right? And I've always prepared your lunch boxes. And if I am not able to, like, at 5 meeting, he would prepare it for you. And so over time, like especially from toddler to primary to middle to, by the time you were middle and high school, your dependence on me sort of lessened, right? Because you would eat more varieties and you didn't need me to feed you or run after you and things like that. So that's how he helped. And he was, like I said, always supportive of my career. Like, if I needed to go somewhere, he would drive me around, or like basically, yeah, I would say like a lot of physical help if I needed, he would do, but emotionally he was always there for me as well.
Right, so some last like more fun questions. Did people in the US ask you a lot about your arranged marriage?
Oh gosh.
You
So
take that, my
many
God.
times. So many times, everywhere outside India, in fact even in India, because I remember, to be honest, like the friends that I had, most of them did not believe in arranged marriage. I'm talking 21 years back. And so when they heard that I was going to get arranged marriage, they asked me, they're like, what, why, how, right? So I am used to that question, starting from there, like being questioned right at the beginning, all the way through. And like I said, I moved out of India pretty early after marriage. So in the US and wherever else I would go, someone and one of my, either my colleagues or my friends would ask me. And I think the way I have always understood their intent, because now, especially that I'm outside India, I understand like, oh, it is an anomaly. It is not normal. And so I actually try my best. Like I go very sincere, like I'm going sincere with you. I go very sincere and I will take my time explaining how I think about it and how it's something that was not forced. And because a lot of people often think it was forced and I had no choice. So the only thing I can only about myself say is that I always had a choice. It was not forced and it was a decision that was taken consciously. So yeah, it sometimes becomes funny, but most people really understand the point of view over time.
So what were some of the weirdest questions people asked?
Oh, good.
Oh goodness. There was one, I'll give you one example. And I'm, unlike your mother, not sincere in explaining. I would just get irritated. It's like, what is there to understand? It's like, this, first of all, it's a personal question. And it's like, oh my God, what did you just like, how do you care? I'm never going to share all of that. And there was one time somebody asked me, so how did you know he's the one? And I told them I could smell money on him. And that's a joke. That's a joke. But I was like, yeah, I was not as, I would not go into depth. But there was that TV series, Indian Matchmaking. Do you know, have you guys heard? It showed how the whole matchmaking thing in India works. And that was released like 2 or 3 years back. And a lot of non-Indian people saw it. And then at work, people would ask me, it's like, oh, did it really happen like that? And that was total drama. It was a reality series. And I was like, it's so hard to explain what goes into it. But yeah, those are the weird questions that I would get. Yeah, do you remember any weirdest question?
Wow, no, I was exceedingly sincere.
Yeah,
At no point was I annoyed because I'm like, let me explain this whole thing to you. I'm sure people didn't mean it that way and didn't want to get bored out of their mind me trying to explain arranged marriage, but that's what I did. I'm hoping it helped.
Yeah, so to close off, I'm not going to get an arranged marriage. I already know that for sure. But would either of you want your kids or future kids or whatever to get an arranged marriage? Like, is that something you want for them?
I have thoughts.
Oh God, no. I mean, again, you have to remember I was 6-year-old. I'm still cleaning his butt, so I really don't think about that far. But yeah, I don't think If they come and ask me for help, I'll help,
Mhm.
but I will never go to them and say you need to get arranged marriage, because you have to remember it also puts a lot of pressure on the parents.
Mhm.
It's like our parents had to go through so much, and initially in the first few years of our marriage, they were always stressed
Mhm.
because they also know it's a risk,
Mhm.
and they also have to live with if anything doesn't go right.
Mhm.
And I just don't want that kind of stress in my
That's valid.
so no for me. You can
Yeah,
answer
I was
that.
gonna say no for me as well. I mean, obviously you're a grown kid, and I mentioned to you a bunch of times, whatever you want. I want happiness for you, so you find for yourself, amazing. Would love
Mhm.
that. And like Nidhi Masi said, I wouldn't want that stress and the
Mhm.
pressure on me to have to look for somebody for you. But all I'll say is keep your mind open. Nothing is bad. Marriage is a great thing if you find the right partner, and whether you find one by yourself or if you need somebody's help, it is totally okay. And I will answer your question very ambiguously by saying I'm open to anything. But yes, it's a lot of work, and I'll do that if you want me to.
Now you're like, I'm a little biased, so I don't think I want any.
All right.
It's
That
like,
really
all right,
is, so-
yeah, the chapter is closed.
Yes, those were all the questions I had for you guys.
All right. Those were very thoughtful questions, and I think it also opened our mind
Mhm.
and helped us think about what our past was and how we've managed and lived successfully or not.
Yeah.
Aryan, thank you for asking the kind of questions that most grown-ups don't even ask each other.
Thank you for having me.
And seriously, you made us think, laugh, get uncomfortable, and reflect a lot. It is not every day that your nephew interviews you about love and life.
And what I'm most proud about is that we're raising kids who ask questions, challenge norms, and want to understand, not just follow.
Don't forget to send us your comments and feedback on what you thought of this topic and episode. We love listening to your stories.
And check out more of the photos, behind the scenes, and blog on our website, chocolateandspicetalk.com, and on Instagram. Thank you for watching.
Bye.